Hi there, folks. Jordan Bateman from the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association, the mighty ICBA, joined as always by
Chris Gardner, president of ICBA.
And we are back after a week absence. Chris was in the Okanagan last weekend, the heartland.
Free enterprise in British Columbia.
The heartland, as Gordon Campbell called it, the cradle of free enterprise, as Christy Clark called it, Bennett country. Chris, how was your trip to the Okanagan?
It was great, and the Okanagan is all of that. So went to Kamloops, Vernon, Kelowna, West Kelowna. Met with...
They're tougher in West Kelowna than in Kelowna proper.
Well, yeah, you know, it was interesting. Did 2 radio interviews, NL Radio in Kamloops, Radio 1150 in Kelowna. Met with a number of our members, met with some community groups. And the message is quite clear. They're worried. And they're worried about the impact of the speculation tax. They're worried about the debate on Kinder Morgan that took place. And what's happening as a result of all that, hotel bookings are down, winery tour bookings are down, restaurant activity is down, and our members who are involved in construction, they're starting to feel the effects of Alberta investors and residents are deciding not to vacation in the Okanagan, deciding not to buy a second home or rent a property, and we've seen projects canceled or delayed. So the ultimate message coming out of the interior is that this government's heading in the wrong direction, and people are going to feel it in terms of jobs and opportunities.
Yeah, speculation tax there is a huge issue. The Urban Development Institute and a number of other groups, including the municipality of West Kelowna, have done a lot of work trying to explain to the NDP government why the speculation tax is so detrimental to Kelowna and West Kelowna, where there is not the same kind of a rental shortage as there is in the lower mainland. You met with West Kelowna Mayor Doug Finlater. You know, Doug, I think it's fair to say, does not line up with us ideologically on every single issue facing British Columbia, but on spec tax, he's been one of the leading voices against it.
Yeah, you know, he is a former federal civil servant, very community-minded. And basically his case, and he's made this directly to Premier John Horgan in the last few weeks, is that the government has used bad data. And the data they're using has skewed the results in West Kelowna. There's a clear case for West Kelowna being exempted from the tax, but the finance minister and the premier have not given him a commitment that they would do that. And effectively what's happened is that the high price of homes on the lakeside in West Kelowna has skewed the data of the average home price in that community. So you go 2 blocks off the lake, and the property values start to decline quite significantly. And in the rest of the community, the average price of homes is very, very low. And so as a result, there isn't the same kind of shortage and affordability issue in the general market. It's limited to a few high-priced homes, a number of them that are located on the lake. So this is the challenge what the NDP took when they rushed to judgment on this tax, and they didn't use data that reflected what was happening on the ground, and they call it a speculation tax, but it is doing nothing to stop speculation. It's basically just a tax on an asset, and you cannot, we've said this a million times before, you will not tax housing in BC into affordability.
Yeah, that just doesn't work. That's interesting, the lakefront properties, and I guess you know, you compare that to East Vancouver, where even a tear-down bungalow in East Vancouver is now $1.5 million, $2 million. Very different than what we're seeing in West Kelowna. So that's intriguing as well. Now, there is some good news out of Kelowna. Bill Kirchhoff, longtime ICBA member, in fact, one of the founding members of ICBA. Kirchhoff Construction's currently building 3 major towers in downtown Kelowna, and this is really a transformational project. Tell us about 1 Water Street and 1151 Sunset.
Yeah, so there's 3 towers right next to each other. One of them, the one that's nearly finished, is sold out, and it was a project that Bill Kirchhoff, Kirchhoff Construction took over when it was in the early phases of construction. There was a change in ownership, and he ended up participating in that project to get it over the line. He's done a great job.
Now you went up to the 22nd
floor.
I bet you that was a terrible view.
Well, it was a great view of the city. We went up in a construction elevator. So if you don't like heights, and I'm not really keen on heights, going up a construction elevator is quite the experience. But I've done it a lot before. They're a little, they sound quite rickety, but nonetheless, we got up and down in a fairly, in a safe fashion.
The view of the lake must have been incredible, because it's right on the lake shore.
Yeah, no, it's outstanding views. The new property that is, they're just starting to break, broken ground on, One West, it is outstanding. The product will be as good as anything that you'll find anywhere in Metro Vancouver, and obviously much more affordable. Interesting thing that they took the approach early on that they were not going to focus on, really going to focus on marketing the project to investors not in Alberta, but in other parts of British Columbia. So they're feeling fine about that project, that it will be successful. Great opportunity for Kelowna. Great project for Kirchhoff Construction. It was good to catch up with Bill.
Excellent. And we're planning a Vancouver Island tour for you shortly, and we have a northern tour as well coming up.
That's right.
Dawson Creek Rodeo, I believe.
Yep.
We sang to Williams Lake Rodeo as well.
We're going to Dawson Creek for sure. We were there last year. This year we're going to be sponsoring the chuck wagon races. We're going to have one entry.
An ICBA entry. That's right.
Yeah, it'll be good. Hopefully they do well and take
cash
the prize.
out all your investments, bet it on whatever ICBA is.
That's right. Put it all on that team of horses.
We've never lost anything before. No. So
that's right. So anyway, it was a good tour. And listen, the message coming out of the interior is very clear. The NDP are going in the wrong direction in terms of how they're trying to deal with affordability. And their position on Kinder Morgan was reckless. It was irresponsible. And as a result, Premier Horgan started a trade war with Alberta that was unnecessary. And the negative impact of that was being felt across the sub-trades in the construction sector, across wineries and hotels and restaurants. It's all negative. Bookings are off. And that's going to hurt our economy, and it's all laid at the feet of the Horgan government.
Awesome. Well, you're watching the ICBA cast live on Facebook and available soon as a podcast in the iTunes and Android stores. ICBA.ca, at ICBABC on Twitter, Facebook.com/the ICBA. For 42 years, ICBA has been the voice of BC's construction and responsible resource development industries, a relentless and passionate, noisy advocate for free enterprise. This morning, 250,000 people in British Columbia got up, went to work in construction. That's 9% of the BC economy. We're proud to represent 2,300 of those companies. We talk BC politics and economic issues here from a free enterprise, free market perspective. We talked about the Okanagan tour. Let's talk about PropRep, proportional representation, more evidence that David Eby is rigging this thing to get PropRep through. We are now, we are recording this on the 22nd. We are now 8 days away from what apparently will be the blackout period for third parties to advertise, to do anything in this campaign, and yet not a single regulation has been signed off by the Attorney General or posted to the Order in Council website.
Right, and so here's the problem. They've announced this process, they've released the ballot question, but there's no rules or regulations governing the process. They've said what the rules will be, but they haven't formalized those rules. So the deadline, according to what they've issued in their material, is July 1st. But there are no rules or regulations defining July 1st as the official date at which third parties are no longer able to participate in the process. And it gives weight to the fact that the process has been rushed, it's been rigged, and it's reckless. And they're limiting debate. They're rushing through this process. They're not linking it to the municipal election or the next provincial election. And unfortunately, this really has become, in our view, a cynical grab for power by supporters by the NDP and the Green Party.
Yeah, I mean, we're 8 days away. The official yes side and official no side have no idea even how to apply for the $500,000 each of funding that's apparently going to be available. They don't know if that funding will come in increments. They don't know if it'll come all up front. They don't know if they need to be a society or a not-for-profit corporation or a full company, a limited company to do it. They don't know what kind of insurance they're going to need. They don't know what kind of provisions they have to make for the provincial government. It's a complete mess for the official side. They don't know if the money that they're raising right now will have to be disclosed or if they can even spend it during the campaign period.
That's right.
So, it's really, David Eby should be embarrassed and ashamed of his work on this file. First of all, he's rigged this thing. Second of all, these are very basic things. It's kind of like If the Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packers, the two greatest franchises, really only the one greatest franchise, but we'll put the Cowboys out for this. It's as if they were going to play a football game next week, and we know it's a football game, and so kind of what's going to happen. But there are no actual rules put in place as far as holding's going to be a penalty or this will be a penalty or. That's what we're coming into. 8 days away, there are no rules for this thing, and meanwhile, David Eby seems to be just huddling about. I mean, I don't know what is going on over there that he can't get these things signed off on.
Well, we live in a time when.
Well, actually, let me ask Chris. Do we know what's going on over there? Is it possible that he cannot get these regulations signed off on because the people doing the due diligence and actually figuring it out say what he's suggesting may not hold up in a court case?
Well, I definitely think they're struggling with how to put everything that the government has indicated they want to see this process, how they want to see it unfold in paper in a regulation. So I think there's some challenges. I think if you step back and think about this, we're about the NDP and the Greens are asking us to change the way we've been electing provincial governments for the last 50 or some odd years, 2 generations. That is a fundamental change in our democracy. And for people to have confidence in our democracy, they need to have confidence in the institutions of government. And that means we should be having a healthy debate, a fair debate. We should be considering alternatives carefully. And then the voters can make an informed decision. The NDP and the Greens have done the exact opposite. Yeah. They've rushed the process. Yeah. They've rigged the process. They've lowered the threshold. They haven't come out with the rules or regulations. They're doing everything they can to tilt the scales and the balance in this debate for change. Yep. And there's no integrity in this process. And what they've done is said, basically what they're saying is, this really isn't about making our institutions more responsive, more democratic. It really is a cynical grab for power. Yeah. This is a government initiative that they just haven't done their homework on. It's not just regulations. They haven't provided riding maps. They haven't provided any definition of these systems. They haven't provided any discussion papers of each of these systems, 2 of which have never been used anywhere in the world and frankly flowed out of David Eby's head into the recommendations. They have not done their homework on this. And what they're saying is, hey, give us a blank check to change the system. That's and don't worry, we'll make sure it's all fair. Yeah. It won't be fair. Right. And for those of you watching who are legitimately concerned about the power of political parties in our system, I'm one of those people. I think political parties have too much influence as it is right now. PropRep doesn't solve that problem. It exasperates it. It makes it worse because these people become responsible to union bosses, not to local voters. Next week, watch in community newspapers around northern British Columbia, around the Kootenays, around the Caribou. You're going to see some ads in your local paper from ICBA on this issue, showing you what your riding could potentially look like. And David Eby, if you're out there and you say that our maps are incorrect, provide your own maps and prove us wrong. That's right. Because all we did was take 2 neighboring ridings and put them together and say this is the kind of massive swath of British Columbia that some poor MLA is going to have to represent. So that's right. PropRep, stop PropRep, icba.ca/stop PropRep. We're going to have more stuff coming out next week before everything has to go dark on the 30th. If the regulations don't come out, we're going to keep spending money.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no regulations, there's no laws forbidding it. Okay. Let's talk, Chris, about municipal politics. Now, we thought Nanaimo was going to have a crazy election, and then Vancouver has decided they're going to have a crazier election. We thought those would be the 2 communities to watch, but Surrey said, no, hold my beer, boys. We're going to be crazy too.
That's right. Surrey and Vancouver are the 2 largest cities in the province, and there's an enormous transition that's going on right now in both those cities. In Vancouver, the Vision Vancouver, there's a number of candidates that are not seeking re-election. They've nominated a new candidate for mayor. The left is divided into other factions. On the right, the NPA is divided, and obviously new candidate for mayor. And Hector Bremner has broken away from NPA.
Ken Sims, you got Hector Bremner, and you've got Wei Young, who declared
That's
this
right.
week on the
So the left and the right in Vancouver are divided in very fundamental and significant ways. How that election is going to start to evolve will be very interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, Surrey has been interesting.
Surrey.
Yeah, Surrey's always been interesting.
Yes.
It's a young, dynamic, growing city. That has been seeking to exert its influence as the 2nd largest city in the province in a more effective way than it had traditionally, and that's been the theme over the last number of decades. Since 1996, center-right parties have held the mayor's chair and majority on council. And through Doug McCallum and later Diane Watts, and most recently with Linda Hepner. Linda Hepner's not running again. A number of councillors, Judy Villeneuve and Mary Martin, are not running, seeking re-election. Bruce Hain just left Surrey First. So Surrey First is sort of in that same position as Vision in the NPA in Vancouver. It's fracturing. So Bruce Hain leaving is the first sign of that. Second, we now have rumours and
well, let's finish Surrey First.
Okay.
So 5, basically you're down to 5 candidates who are running for re-election under the Surrey First banner.
Yeah.
8 people will be in a room tonight from Surrey First, the 5 plus the 3 who aren't running again. So everyone except Bruce Hain, who's left the party, they will be in a room tonight to decide who the nominee for Surrey First mayor will be. Of the 5 who are running for re-election, 4 of them have said, consider me.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And a sign of the dysfunction of Surrey First is the fact that in that room will be the 8 current elected officials from Surrey First and a lawyer. Healthy parties probably don't need, or unified parties probably don't need a lawyer sitting with you holding your hand when you're trying to have a discussion about who should lead you. Interesting times.
Well, here's what I think Surrey First forgot along the way. And that is that there's no modern Democratic Party that I could think of in the United States or Canada or elsewhere where you have only elected officials meeting behind closed doors to choose a new leader.
It's very PropRep-y, really.
Yes, it's very it's in this day and age of participatory democracy, it's unusual. It's not democratic, and I'm sure that will face more scrutiny given what's happening in Surrey in terms of the attention that's now going to be focused on it. So it's operating a little bit like a star chamber. That's not great. It's not going to give whoever comes out of this contest as the winner the moral high ground to say, hey, we've got this party that has thousands of members. We've had a nomination process, a vigorous debate, and I've won this debate. Now I want to contest the mayor's chair. It'll be the exact opposite. 8 people met in someone's home, had some coffee, and decided on who was going to be the candidate for mayor. That's not a great way to choose your elected official.
And really, bluntly, it's done to limit the participation of South Asian voters in Surrey, who are a strong voting bloc and have a history of coming out for nominations. Yeah. And there was a fear that that they could poach a party or a candidate through that. I'm not sure how you go to those same people and say, hey, we shut you out of all the nominating process, but elect us, we're looking out for your best interests.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. The party should have evolved. The constitution of the party should have evolved and caught up with modern day democracy.
With even 1990s Reform Party democracy.
That's right. So that's a little bit of it. That's a significant challenge. We had rumours now that former cabinet minister and MLA from Langley, Rich Coleman, is considering potentially running for mayor in Surrey. That's obviously gotten a lot of press in the last few days. It's really changed the dynamic of the dialogue around how the race will start to shape up. Significant decision for any MLA to decide to move to a different level of government. This one is the added issue is that if Mr. Coleman decided to do this, he'd be running in a community he hasn't lived in, and that's not an easy issue to overcome.
No. Rich does live on 197th Street. The border is 196, so I can see Surrey from my house, he could say, Sarah Palin-esque. But obviously he has a longer history. He's lived in Langley for decades. The interesting though about Rich, I think what makes him a compelling candidate for so many people is the fact that his skill set does match a lot of the challenges Surrey has. Surrey has a crime problem. This guy was a top cop. He was an RCMP. He was a Solicitor General. Passionate about crime reform. In fact, I think he may have been Solicitor General still when Diane Watts' crime reduction strategy first came in, and he was very helpful in getting that started. You have homelessness. This is a guy who reformed BC housing and put more units out into British Columbia, despite what you've heard from the NDP than anyone before him. He had that file for a long time. And then as well, he would be a difficult voice to ignore at a regional table because he's very experienced, he's
Yeah.
well respected, he could build coalitions on both sides of the fence. And if you put him at Metro Vancouver or at TransLink Mayor's Council, this won't be like the Surrey we've seen from the past 4 years with councillors kind of quietly, meekly going along with the Gregor Robertsons of the world. This is the kind of person who would be very vocal about South Fraser issues.
Yeah, Rich will be an attractive candidate for a number of people in Surrey because there is an underlying current of change that's running through politics. Mm-hmm. And he will represent a sea change in terms of really changing the dynamic of government at City Hall in Surrey. Fresh perspective, very experienced. There's a populist undertone to Rich in terms of how he identifies with people, the issues that he champions. So if you're coming out of the Surrey First nomination process in the Star Chamber today, you're going to have to be very worried about what a Rich Coleman candidacy would offer on policy, knows policy issues locally, probably better than anyone. He will have a following for those who are strong believers in free enterprise and common sense regulation, low taxes. They're going to be very interested in what Rich Coleman has to say. So I think, and given the fracturing on Surrey First, this could be a very interesting race and potentially one that Rich Coleman wins.
Yeah. Now, the guy who's kind of left out in the cold here is Bruce Hayne, who has made it clear that he's left Surrey First. He's sitting as an independent councillor. It's no secret Bruce Hayne had wanted to be mayor. It seems pretty clear that he could not get the votes necessary within the Star Chamber in order to get that nomination. So he's gone kind of the Berinda Rasodi route out on his own. Berinda Rasodi tried that, and the truck ran over, the electoral truck ran over, and she lost her seat. So it is interesting to see where Bruce Hayne will land in all this. Surrey is a huge city, and it is very difficult for councillors to build up their name recognition because Surrey is maybe the largest city in Canada without its own daily newspaper. Yeah. So, you still have that community newspaper feel. So think of, a town like White Rock that has its own community paper. Well, all of a sudden, very different for Surrey, probably should be getting more coverage from the Vancouver papers than it does. But because of that, you don't build up that same kind of mass media name recognition. Yeah.
So Surrey is going to be a fascinating race to watch. If Rich Coleman does decide to put his hat into the ring, is he running as an independent candidate alone or as an independent with a group of people? That'll be a very interesting dynamic. Yeah. What happens to Surrey First? Does it continue to fracture and fall apart even further? And what does the left do? Is the left going to look at this and say, okay, this is an opportunity for us to put forward a strong candidate? They haven't really had strong candidates since 2005 when Diane Watts won the race for mayor. She was virtually uncontested in 2008 and 2011.
Especially when she picked up Judy Villeneuve.
That's right.
That was the only person who might have been able to touch her.
Yeah, so I think the race in Surrey is going to be Surrey and Vancouver are going to be close in terms of lots of challenges, drama, intrigue, but both fascinating races to watch.
Okay, political question. Which slate would you rather be in charge of? Vision Vancouver or Surrey First? Which one do you think has the best chance of holding on to power?
Well, I think they're both. They both potentially have the ability to come out of this with their candidates for mayor winning the race, because they have name recognition. They have lists. They have incumbent candidates. But do not underestimate the ability of political parties and political elected officials to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. So it wouldn't surprise me if neither of those parties were able to secure the mayor's chair.
It's very interesting times. There was a poll in Vancouver that showed Kennedy Stewart has a slight lead over everyone else, but it's really a dog's breakfast as far as who's where. If you could do me one favor, Vancouver, please do not vote for Kennedy Stewart. That guy is already threatening to shut down the port of Vancouver because he doesn't believe Vancouverites want to be a port city. That would be disastrous, not just for the Canadian and provincial economy, but for Vancouver's economy. Really start parsing these guys' statements because the things they're saying should be very frightening to those of us who, want to have a job. that crazy goal of having a good job close to home. Anything else shaking that we should touch on?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Okay. Well, ICBA.ca, at ICBABC on Twitter, Facebook.com/the ICBA we're working on something very exciting for next week, a video. We're hoping we can get it out next week. If we do, you'll know it when you see it. It'll be a big deal on the public policy scene. Thanks for watching. We will be back next week because we will be back next week on the 29th because we'll want to be discussing PropRep one more time before David Eby's fake regulations.
That's right.
Maybe they'll appear by then.
I do have a prediction for the upcoming NFL season.
Oh boy, here we go.
Seahawks beat Green Bay.
No.
Cowboys beat the Seahawks. There you go. Just had to say that.
Okay, well, I have, this weekend I have a big plan to go home and watch a 2-hour documentary on the Ice Bowl, the most famous game in NFL history, where the Green Bay Packers defeated the terrible Dallas Cowboys. So, 13 world championships. I can't really hear what the Cowboys have. All right, thanks for watching.